Welcome to those of you who are here bright and early, right at 1 o'clock Eastern. We're here today to talk about creating data-driven, personalized nutrition plans with DNA testing. So you can see that I'm here today with Lois Nahirney, and she's going to be talking about gaining insight into your client's biological roadmap to health. Specifically, DNA testing can give you a window into your client's genetic diet predispositions. So she's offering a way to learn your client's genetic propensity for macronutrient metabolism, food tolerances, vitamin and mineral metabolism, detoxification, hormone health, methylation, fitness, mental health, and so much more. So it's really about taking that guesswork out of your client's nutrition plan and learning how, in the process, you can save time and eliminate uncertainties and increase success rates by using this DNA testing. So welcome, Lois. I'll do a quick introduction for you as well. You have quite the bio, so I want to share with everyone a little about you. So as I mentioned, I'm here with Dr. Lois Nahirney, and she's the president and CEO of dnaPower Inc. And she's revolutionizing preventative healthcare by empowering people to make smarter diet, fitness, and health decisions based on their unique genetic makeup. She has identical twins adopted from Vietnam, one who's transgender, which led to a fascination in DNA. She solved years of personal health problems by discovering a simple vitamin weakness in her genes and committed to bringing this knowledge to others. Lois has a doctorate in business and has held a number of senior executive roles. She's been honored with several awards, including Canada's Most Powerful Women, Top 100. Lois advised the BC government on gender equity as chair of the Premier's Women's Economic Council, is the co-founder of We for She, is a founding visionary of the Prosperity Project, and also chairs the Canadian Women's International Network. So I am so excited to have you here today, Lois. Thank you for being here. I can't wait to see what you're going to share with us on this topic of creating data-driven, personalized nutrition plans. And I'll really leave it to you from here. I know you've got quite a presentation plan, so I'll sort of turn it over to you from here.
Well, thank you so much, Veronica. And I'm so delighted to be with the Networking Nutritionists. I have a real warm spot in my heart for nutritionists. I feel like it is what our next generation of health needs, is people who provide that coaching for people to live better, healthier, everyday lives. And I think that we have for far too long undervalued just the absolute critical importance of our nutrition and how we are what we eat, and how really our nutritionist coaches are going to be the ones who pave the way to help create a healthier society going forward. So it's my favorite thing to work with nutritionists, in part because I know that you can help create a better path for clients. So absolutely love it. So I'm going to share a little bit with you about the unique information that DNA testing can bring, how diet and lifestyle can impact your DNA, what you can learn through the testing, and then how you can use it with clients. So I'm going to share my screen here. Can you see the screen? Just want to double check, Veronica?
Yep, it looks great.
Okay, fantastic. So what we want to do is just talk a little bit about how you use this data. So, I've been interested in genetics for 20 years, and I'll tell you a little bit about some of my personal story on that first. So as mentioned in my bio, I adopted identical twins. These are my children. I adopted them 20 years ago. They're now 21. And I adopted identical twin girls. At age 3 was the first time when one of my daughters asked me why she wasn't a boy. And at age 4, asked me again. At age 5, asked me again. And what I had was this little person who knew he was a boy and somehow had ended up in the wrong body. And I couldn't understand that with identical twins. So I really started researching long ago, what are genetics? How do genetics work? Really learned a lot about epigenetics, how the body chemistry and other things work. And so here I have identical twins. My daughter became my son 8 years ago. And this is Kaylin and Levi. And, and it was just, I've had this incredible opportunity to learn about nature nurture on a daily basis in my home and what importance that can play. And we'll talk about a little bit about the nature nurture and genetics as we go through. So a little bit of my story then of how that wove into what I'm involved in. So I was an executive, and in my 40s, I had done my doctorate in healthcare, but I started to get sick. And on the surface, I looked healthy and fit, and I was going hard traveling internationally. But these are some of the symptoms I started to develop. I had chronic fatigue, restless leg syndrome. I had gained some weight, kind of that pound a year in the 40s. And I had extreme periods. At times during my period, my whole uterus would drop out of my body and I would bleed profusely, became super anemic. But the thing that scared me the most was this air hunger. I could never pull a full breath. I was always short of breath. So that sent me for 4 years of doctors, of going through specialists. I went to an asthma specialist to see if that was the problem with the breathing, a respirologist. I went to a gynecologist multiple times. They put me on hemophiliac medicine to slow my bleeding. I was given drugs for restless leg syndrome. I was put on the pill to try and stop my periods to see if that would help. I was given iron shots in my butt. That did nothing. And I finally ended up where I went to the doctor and he said, your iron is 0. Get to the hospital now. And I was hospitalized for a few days for blood transfusions because I was on collapse. And it just was crazy to me that here, I'm smart. I researched this stuff and I couldn't find any solutions. I was going to doctors, who has the time, and couldn't find a solution. And it ended up, shortly after that, I was at a family function, and I have a cousin who's a 3-time Canadian bodybuilding champion. She calls herself the DNA diva. She's phenomenal. And she had was involved with this brand new startup, a DNA company that was looking at diet, fitness, and health, and taking all of the amazing gene research that had been done and trying to put it into the hands of people. I did the testing because she said, you know what, you need to figure out about your twins. What do your twins, what is it about that your twin, you won't know their diet. Like, how do you know what they're going to need? And so it made total sense to me. So at the time I went through with that, I said, I'm going to do my testing too, just honestly to support her, because the testing was way more expensive at the time. It was a few $1,000s per person. And I got the results back, learned a ton about my twins, but I learned that I have vitamin B issues. I have genetic weakness in vitamin Bs, which about 1/3 of the population have, which can create methylation issues. And basically my cells were starved. I had no Bs working in my body, and that had created this air hunger. So the Bs support the iron, support the oxygen, support all the cells, support, backup for hormones, all kinds of things. And I went, well, isn't that curious? Started taking vitamin Bs. 2 weeks later, I suddenly had my life back. So I spent 4 years trying to find it, and not one person had suggested nutrition. I had never taken vitamins, didn't believe in it, and just really looked at changing my diet. I also found out I've got some weakness in my lactose genes, pulled the lactose out, and between the Bs and my lactose within 2 weeks, within 2 weeks, I was feeling better. And then I just dropped the pounds, went back to what should be my natural weight. And I have not looked back since. My life has become the next part of the story is I ended up advising the company. They recruited me to become their CEO. And the day after I started, I presented to the new investor who was going to be supporting the business. And I showed up the next day to sign the check. We were all ready to celebrate. And he was dead. He died at the night before we signed the check. I ended up acquiring the company. I believe in it. It is, it solved my health problems. I want to bring this information to the world. I've been doing this now for 8 years. I help people be happier and healthier every day. We know we change people's lives, and I love it. So anyway, that's just a little bit about my story. It's been really fascinating to get into this. So I wanted to, share, of course, we all come from different families. So we inherit different genetics from our moms and dads. So this is my mom and dad, my brothers and sister. You'll see I look nothing like my sister. My mom has German genetics, my dad, Ukrainian. My dad was weak genetically in vitamin Bs and lactose. My mom in insulin. She had type 2 diabetes and poor carbs and fats. I inherited the vitamin B and lactose issues. My sister inherited some of the type 2 diabetes and carb issues. So it's interesting how even with a family, you have family history, but what did you inherit? And what are the genes that you need to focus on? And that's really what we are looking at. So, that's just a little bit of how I got involved in this. But what I love is that DNA testing for preventative health is a really simple and targeted way that you can transform health and improve outcomes for your clients. And it gives you data to work with, which I love because it helps people understand why they're making a decision. And so with this data-driven information that's personalized, you can put diet, fitness, and health into your clients' hands. It really gives you more specific information in order to make recommendations. And so, as you know, consumers are looking for answers. People are always looking for the diet right from them. And of course, as nutritionists, you will know you've always got people saying, oh, well, what about a keto diet? What about a paleo diet? What about, in the older days, Atkins diet? And all we have to do is look at magazines to know people are always looking for the diet right for them, the vitamins that they should be taking, how to get the best exercise, how to stay healthy, and really how to get to the root of chronic disease. And I'm assuming many times when you are getting clients that are coming to you, it's because they're starting to experience weight gain, chronic health issues. Something is wrong and they can't find answers through the system, and they're trying to find a way to help. And so that's, really that is the essence of the challenge that people are dealing with. And one of my favorite quotes is, people are fed by the food industry, which pays no attention to health, and are treated by the health industry, which pays no attention to food. And that's just it's actually quite alarming. And we know that our food industry has its challenges, as does the health industry. We sort of have a sickness industry as opposed to a health industry. And so we are the ones who can support that. So we know that there is no one size fits all diet. And that's what the beautiful opportunity is for a nutritionist, is to help advise people with that. What I love about what we do with genetics is that actually quite a small change can make an enormous difference. And we narrow down the field of what that difference can look like. And we help with doing that. We help so that knowing your DNA can help change your life. And so the DNA is essentially your biological roadmap. It makes sense. It's the core. It's our foundation. It is the code that defines our body. It is our roadmap to health. And if you can figure out that roadmap, you now have a much better ability and opportunity to be healthy. And so if you don't know what diet is right for someone, it's hard to know how to advise them. And so if it's the genetics that really give you the true key, of course, you do your workup on people and the intake forms, and that history provides help. But as you saw with my family, okay, which way am I? Is it going to be the diabetes that's the issue, or is it the lactose, or is it the vitamin Bs? And I might have intuited that over time, but you get the actual data to help people know. And what's cool is that in the genes, not only can you find out the foods, but you can, there's actually genes that determine what foods you crave and why you like certain foods. And there's genes that define how you manage fats, carbs, and proteins, how you put the right macronutrient diet together for people. And so our diet and DNA was adapted to different parts of the world, really based on where your ancestors came from. So the Inuit had to adapt their genes to be able to absorb large amounts of fat. That's different in the Asian cultures, where they were eating a much leaner diet, which is around fish and rice, and Europeans who had to have a lot of animal products in order to survive over the winters. They adapted some of the lactose genes because that was the food that was available to them. But we've essentially in Canada become a bit of this potpourri of genetics, because our ancestors aren't coming from the same place. We're not living on the same land. We've now got, we've all met and married different people. And, so I come from German and Ukrainian genetics. So what did I inherit out of those letters that all came together? We have different mixes. And it's, of course, through ancestry, we're finding some real interesting things in the combinations now in our genes. So we know that our genes came from and are adapted from different parts of the world. And now we're eating international food in an environment where we have a lot of food. And how is that working for us? So we know, and nutritionists will know this, many common foods can make you ill without having the right DNA. And so often what you have to do is you have to pull out all lactose, all gluten, kind of go to a really clean diet to try and figure out the core of what's making someone ill, but we can help you pinpoint about whether that's genetically related or whether there might be gut issues, or whether it could just be the quality, for example, of the gluten, because we know the quality of gluten is quite weak and poor in Canada right now. So we can help you narrow that down. But we do know when people eat those foods, what you see is increase in weight. If it doesn't work, they don't have the genes for it. That's where, what is your body going to do? If you don't have the lactose genes, how can you break that down easily without incredible gut bacteria? How can you break down gluten? If you're eating fast foods, if you're eating GMOs and refined sugars, you have to, I mean, the body can't deal with it. You're going to get an increase in weight, illness, and disease. And so we really, we have to support our bodies. And if we can learn what is most important for it, that's important. And so every one of us has a unique genetic makeup that supports our road to health. We are all unique. We're an N equals 1 in scientific terms, where each one of us is truly unique. And with this testing, what you're trying to do is identify this road to health based on the variations you have. So if you know where you have variations, it's kind of like your body is your roadmap, and you can figure out where the potholes are. Don't drive your body into the potholes. You're just not going to live as long. And so, it kind of makes sense. Like, don't just avoid them. So this is really, how do you avoid the potholes? So DNA truly is this blueprint for life. And so I don't know, how much genetics you had in your education, but really with our DNA, you are unique. But it's interesting because, oh, I'm not even clicking. I'm clicking the wrong. Something is moved where I'm clicking the wrong screen. So my screen is moving, and I'm just going to catch up. I did talk to you here about the gluten and about the weight and how that can be a problem, and GMOs. And then how we have a unique genetic makeup, and that there's a roadmap to health. Somehow it flipped to my other screen here. So DNA is the blueprint for life. We know that in terms of our genetics, but how much of you is unique? So do you know how much of your DNA is unique? So we actually have 3 billion letters that make up the code in every cell in our 23 chromosomes. And so it's actually 99.8% that's unique, and about 0.1 or 0.2%, sorry, that's identical, and 0.1 or 0.2% that's unique. And so what we're looking at is and what we study in genetics is this 0.2%. We're trying to understand how this 0.2% creates the incredible uniqueness that makes you and me, and creates all that variation. So we study about 10 to 20 million what's called single nucleotide polymorphisms. So what our code has is, you can see there's kind of all of this, the different letters that go along there. And then you can see where it says SNP, single nucleotide polymorphism, there's a question mark. That's what we're studying, to see what letter did you inherit that in that area. And so you've got your cell and your genome, which is within that, your chromosome, 23 chromosomes in pairs that we inherit from our parents. That chromosome then has all of the DNA, and it goes into bunches called genes, and the genes make a protein that creates, has a formula that will make a protein that, creates your body. It tells your body what to do. It's kind of the recipe, and I'll talk to that in a moment. We have different bases, cytosine, adenine, guanine, thymine. You don't really need to know all of that, other than the fact that if you get different letters, it creates a different recipe. And so it is like a cookbook. Your DNA is all of the letters. It creates a recipe, and you've got ingredients that, let's say, makes a pie. The DNA forms to a gene, which makes proteins, which makes your body. So that's kind of what we're looking at with the DNA. And if you have one ingredient that is different, it can completely change the recipe. So in a weak analogy, if your body's trying to make lemon pies and you don't have the genes for lemon, you're going to get a rotten pie. So just don't do lemon pie, do something else, make apple pie. And so you don't want to be working with the things in your body that don't have the right ingredients. But when we're looking at genes, what's really interesting is that they express themselves, and they can turn on off, and they have a dimmer switch where they can maybe, vary in terms of their expression. And those genes can be impacted by lifestyle choices, which is really now the interesting part, and how it links to what we're dealing with here in terms of what you do. So DNA is not your destiny. The choices you make change how your genes are expressed. I'm sure you know somewhat something about epigenetics, which is the study of how behavior and environment affect the way your genes function. And epi means on top of your genetics, which is the traditional. It really is, it's the layered on. And now we get into the super juicy part where your DNA is kind of fixed and gives you a roadmap, but it's the epigenetics that is really the part that's so, so powerful. And so in lifestyle and epigenetics, they truly are the key. And the things that impact them are diet, exercise, sleep, stress, vitamins, and toxins. And so those are really the things, many of those things are what you are working with as you support your clients. So your genes are fluid and responsive to everything you do. They're even responsive to your thoughts. And so so again, helping people work. I don't know if any of you read the books by Joe Dispenza. You are the placebo effect, and you are changing, breaking the habit of being yourself. Those are wonderful books just to read about how the brain can really impact your genes and expression. And we know that because we see identical twins. I live with them every day. I have this case study in my home, how lifestyle and environment is truly important and impacts the gene expression. So lots of amazing studies on identical twins, how, you know, you've got one who smoked lots in the sun, ended up having cancer, and one who did not. And really you can see the physical resemblance, but the other was much healthier and living a cleaner lifestyle. And it really comes through. And so, as you would know, how you eat, exercise, think, and feel can have a big impact overall on health and genetics. What's really interesting is finally we're getting good studies beyond just the genetics, because all of our work is based on scientific studies. There's papers behind everything, but how a DNA diet can outperform other diets. And so many people love, you know, like the keto diet, because you get a result, you get results in 3 to 6 months. And in fact, even on this particular study, it showed that people lost more weight in the first 6 months, or first actually about 3 to 6 months on a ketogenic diet. But over 6 months to 12 to 18 months, absolutely a DNA diet. So working and eating according to your DNA created the long-term gain. It was more weight loss and much better improvements in the measures of cholesterol and blood glucose. So what happens is if there's people who do a ketogenic diet and they don't have good fat genes or strong liver, they create fatty liver disease, and they can almost kill themselves doing it. So I've had some athletes who swore by ketogenic, put their clients on ketogenic, were coaches, and almost killed themselves because they had really shut their organs down. And so you should, you know, you don't ever, I always say any diet can be good. It just depends on your DNA. So the studies are really showing just how important some of that can be about really working according to your body. So now you can put this personalized information into people's hands. And another thing that happens is, the word is recidivism. How long do people stay on a diet or stick with it? When people have the data and they can see it, in our case, it's not in black and white, it's green and red. They now have the data that goes, oh yeah, you made me come off gluten and lactose, but really, is that the problem? Was it something else? You can show them the data that says, yeah, no, you just don't have the genes for this. You know, sorry, you didn't inherit that, but here's the data. And so our clients years and years later will be, I got that information, and because of that, I always have this vitamin, or I always make sure I am having more omega-3s, or decreasing my fat, or, you know, enjoying my carbs, because the data is there for them and they know it is specific to them. So I'll just tell you a little bit about who you are, because what I want to do is dive into some examples and show you how you use this stuff with your clients. And so in terms of our company, the company's been around for 15 years. I ended up acquiring the company 8 years ago. And really it was because I wanted to bring this really simple information to the world. The company was one of the very first in the world doing DNA testing and looking at how it applied in people's lives. So we've been really got a very long history around seeing the application. We test over 200 of these genetic variations called SNPs. We were one of the first in the world doing it. We have over 10 years experience to 15, really researching genetic variations, picking the best genes and applying it with clients. everything is based on the best genetic studies that are out there related to those genes. I came from tech, and so I had, just and it was business intelligence software. So I had brilliant people design our software, capture it, build the reports, customer friendly, all of what we're trying to do. And I'll talk to it. We focus on data privacy. I'm a really big believer in medical choice, medical privacy, and protecting people's information. And so we have a custom SNP panel where we collect the data. We don't just give you one SNP as you might get in some of the health data with, let's say, 23andMe. We pull together the most important studies that look at a combination of genes. Carbs isn't one gene, it's a combination of genes. And so same with fats, we're looking at the combination of genes that will give you the best indication of where someone's health is. And we do extensive research, full-time scientists and things, that's scientists that work on this. Just so that you know, there is genetic non-discrimination laws in the US and Canada. People cannot discriminate based on your DNA. We don't test the really rare stuff. We test the common things that impact your health day to day. No employer is going to discriminate you based on having a bad carb gene. So, that's not really an issue, but just so you know, because so many people, when they hear genetics, they kind of go, ooh, that sounds complicated. It sounds difficult. It's now pretty simple. We put it really simply into your hands. We're big on privacy. So only a barcode, here's a swab, only a barcode goes to the lab. That's it. We only collect the data we need. It's kept private, never sold. We never sell the data. Just so you know, 23andMe and Ancestry, they make their money. They underprice on their services, but they sell their data to pharma and for other research. Only the data connected to the reports comes together, and you can use a pseudonym if you choose. We don't care. We really just want people to feel that their data is being protected, and we destroy the samples after use. So that's just sort of about the samples. What we provide it's more than I think you'll see any of the competitors. We have 5 reports, 4 on diet, fitness, health, and brain, and 1 summary report that kind of puts it into a small thing because the customers don't really want to dig that deep. We want to give you a snapshot of the graphs and the recommendations. So these are the areas we cover in each of the reports. So we cover all of the things related to diet. And so some of our nutritionists just use the diet report, no problem. But there's a lot more data, and I think it's higher value for the customers. If you give a little bit into the fitness, there is some of the stroke and cardio genes in there. Looking at detoxification, hormones, inflammation, and methylation are really important, as you'd know. So if someone has weak detox genes, you know that they could have some challenges. There's supplements and food that can support them. Same with hormones. Like, we work with a lot of women who have got infertility issues, bad periods, menopause issues. If we see that there's a lot of variation, they just need some cleaner diets and some changes in order to get that back in balance. And probably the most profound one that we test for is the Alzheimer's genes. So while we say we don't test for rare diseases, the Alzheimer's combination leads to plaquing in the body. It's called amyloid beta. And the reason we test for it is because we believe diet is fundamental to avoiding that manifesting in people. And if you know you have the gene combination, which my kids do, it means you just have to be super, super careful on fried foods, trans fats. It means that your body has a higher predisposition for plaquing around that, and it can lead to higher concussion risk as well. And so I also believe people who have kids who are in contact sports should be doing this. We ended up finding out my kids, when they had this concussion gene issue, they'd had concussions. I saw issues, got these results, and realized they can't be in contact sports because their risk is just way too high. And we switched them, into swimming and other sports at that time. So just little things that, depending on your clients or the families that you're working with, that you may want to watch out for. So this is an example. We give you, there's 250 pages of stuff that you get. The summary report is 17 pages, but you get pages on the graphs, green and red, you get recommendations pages, and you get detailed pages. So that's what we're trying to do, is give you all the information you might need to really dig into something. And we've tried to make it super easy for a customer to have and for you to have, so that you can work with it as easily as possible. And so it's green and red. So when you scan something like this, I can instantly know what diet and recommendations to put for a person. So We're looking at carbs, fats, and proteins on the first. This person has remarkable macronutrient genes, but they've got some issues on the next page. I can see on food tolerances, so lactose and gluten are going to be an issue, and I can see that they need omega-3s and Bs. So I just look at that and I automatically know how I need to be advising, or how our nutritionists need to advise for it. And the recommendations all show up on the page anyway. So you get food recommendations and supplement recommendations that you can now use this data to advise more specifically for a client. And so when you're working with it, what you're doing is you just take the report, as I just did, you scan it, you look for the areas 50% red or more, it produces a recommendation. You make sure, we always start with, what are your clients, what are the most important health objectives for you? Because we don't know if a client, when we're doing the testing with the results, whether they're 1-year-old or 92 years old. And I've tested 1-day-olds because people were concerned about their genetics, and 92-year-olds. And so we don't know if they're dealing with a chronic disease, if they're an athlete. So we look at that, and then we can apply and understand what they're looking for in this data. And usually once I know, we know their health priorities, there's 3 to 10 actions that their DNA demonstrates is really important as a lifetime step for them to be working with their body versus against it. So let's look at a couple of examples. We've got 2 women who came to us who were trying to lose weight. One was raised in carbs are bad, no carbs, and one was raised fats bad, no fats. And ironically, it was exactly opposite to their genetics. So in the left one, this person has, the top one is carbs, and and the next area is fats. I'm not sure what you can see on your screen. The first person has absolutely got the genetics for a high carb, lower fat diet. That's how their body is built. That's the genes they inherited. And they were absolutely on the opposite. They just believed, can't have carbs, bad for me. The other woman has weak carb genes and outstanding fat genes, could actually be on a keto diet, believed fats were her enemy because that's what she had been raised with. When we showed them the data and they were able to switch their diets within 3 months, each of them had lost 20 pounds and were on their way to 30 pounds. Both of them lost in the end 30 pounds, down several dress sizes, feeling healthier, doing so much better. But it's funny how we think certain things are right, or that we're following the right things, and it's just not that. And you can see how you can have 2 women come in with a weight issue and have a completely different recommendation that should go for them. Here is taking a look at the food tolerances area, lactose and gluten. Is it contributing to weight gain and inflammation? Some people present, as you know, and have figured out that they're sensitive to lactose. It's remarkable how many people can be in their 50s and not realize that lactose is a problem, and it's contributing to either inflammation or to weight gain. And we know that only 25 to 35% of the population inherited the genes that continue to process lactose. On gluten, many of the intolerances are actually acquired. So you will be able to see in the report, especially if you go into the back end, and I'll show you just briefly how you look at the back end data results, we can see whether it is due to certain genes, or in many cases, people have harmed their gut. And so, and they can't manage the gluten. We know that gluten is, up to 5 times more gluten is in the wheat and the GMO and the grains we have now. It's not as healthy as it used to be. And so that alone can be a problem. Or if they've been on antibiotics, that can create weakness in the gut. So it can create a problem there. This is looking at a portion of the vitamin and supplements panel. In this case, we can see that it's fairly red in the Bs. So if this person particularly is under stress, or a woman over 45, we know women over 45 need more Bs. And particularly if they get a profile like this, where you can see the B12, very red, some in folate, some in the B6, but in general now, if this is a woman 45 and older, I'd say you really should consider a vitamin B complex, potentially methylated, because the odds are very high. Your body is not pulling as much of that from your diet as it needs, and it's harder for your body to absorb. And so these are the sorts of things that can create micronutrient deficiencies. As you may well know from research, almost all North Americans are deficient in probably magnesium, vitamin D, and many in Bs as well. we have deficiencies in all kinds of age and areas. And this just helps identify where you're probably at a greater risk overall. I always like to say people get sick because of deficiency or toxicity. Our body wants to be in homeostasis. And so if you can identify where the deficiencies might exist or where the toxicity might exist, heavy metals and other things, then you're now going to really be on the road for getting people's bodies back into a steady state. And once the body's in a steady state, you're not going to trigger disease. You're not going to be, triggering cancers or chronic illness. It's about getting it back into balance. Here's another area that's super important to learn about your clients. Do they have effective detoxification genes? Do they need some more support in the hormone genes? And what are their inflammation genes? So I included some here that show, okay, the detoxification panel, kind of 50-50. It's probably not that bad, could use a little bit of ongoing support, but this person really has some weak, it's in the synthesis area of hormones. So if that synthesizing hormones is weak, it's going to create a challenge in the body. We look also at metabolism and elimination. I also see a lot of people who don't eliminate the hormones. And so it builds up in the body. You can start seeing the inflammation and the weight gain and things occur. And then if I see somebody with the inflammatory response at 70%, you just know they're really sensitive to stuff and they're going to be dealing with more body inflammation. If it's the second one that's really red, I know that there's probably been some cancers in the family because the tumor necrosis, the TNFA gene is just not clearing things as easily for them. And then finally, we look at methylation and it's broken down quite finely. But you can see whether the methylation pathways are potentially a problem for people. So there's a lot of information here that diet and things can help support. So it's just giving you a sense of what you can look at. So again, here's another snapshot. I look at this and I'm going, okay, this is a person genetically predisposed to a higher fat, lower carb diet, and probably would benefit for some higher protein, just based on what the results look like. And so again, many of you, I don't think I included it, you've got your percentages of how much percent of carbs, fats, and proteins that you want to try and build into somebody's diet. Those are the sorts of things you balance out based on this data. When that's the recommendation, or that's the issue, now you're going to be able to look in here and see what based on all of the nutritionists, we work with many nutritionists to try and build out what are the recommendations. And we try to keep it into a place where it's broad enough, because I know many people have more specific things they work with. But if it's carbs, we're saying, okay, lower glycemic, lower carb diet, focus on whole fruits, vegetables, grains. We are believers in the whole carbs. But just, you can't not have carbs, just get the really healthy ones in, no donuts, of course. And then protein, we know that getting a bit more plant-based protein on a frequent basis for somebody who has certain genes that the protein doesn't absorb as easily, that's an important thing for them to do. And then we have more tips throughout the reports that just sort of help guide. We know that you'll have your preferences. My kitty's coming here to say hello. Okay, great. So interpreting the reports, here's all of a diet report. Again, I can look at this and say, okay, oh dear, I've got a tricky person. This person has some issues in carbs. The LDL cholesterol might mean they have the plaquing gene. I'll look at the back of the report for that. Saturated fats, and they put on weight with protein. And the body mass index is high. This is a person who their whole family has got weight issues. You can just see it. And they've got a lactose issue, gluten's okay, surprisingly, salt issues, need lots of vitamins. These are your really, really tricky clients where you're going, okay, sorry, sweetie, you didn't inherit the best set of genes. You will have to eat a cleaner, healthier diet for your lifetime. It's just not, it's just what you got. And you know what? That great thing is, it means you're going to live a healthier lifestyle as a result. So, you get some of the easy ones and you get some of the difficult ones. And this one would be one that I would see that would be just a wee bit trickier. Here's a whole bunch of recommendations then that would support this person in managing that. And then of course, they'd probably need a great diet plan put together for them. I'm going now one level deeper just to show you the data that's available. So if this was the carbohydrates and it's 40%, I can go into the back of the report and see which genes did it show up on. And this one's a curious one because it's actually, the result is moderate, 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 which means I might guess that this person has one parent who's probably overweight and maybe one who isn't, because they seem to have inherited one healthy gene, a normal gene, and one that has got more issues with carbohydrates, or it came from a mix of both. You just never know how those genetics came down. What I'll then look at and say, okay, do I need to worry about their carbs? I probably need to be cautious about it. And then we provide you with very detailed gene reports where we show you the frequency. What is the genotype? Those are the two letters you inherit. And then what frequency the population have it. In the very first one, the ABCC9 carbohydrate metabolizer gene, 52% of people have normal genes, 38% have got the frequency where it's associated with negative effects on carbohydrate metabolism, as indicated by the insulin sensitivity index. So, okay, there it is actually, the research shows that with even a half a variation, there's some concerns. And if they had the TT, 10% of people, it's just poor effects on carb and insulin. So I can go in here and see, okay, they've probably got some of the gene that can carry them. Your body wants to be healthy. It wants to rely on the normal part of the gene. But if your body gets out of balance, it starts triggering and tripping, like that dimmer switch goes up and down, some of the weaker part of the genotype on it. And we do, again, provide you with this information. We're available to help, guide you. I work with lots of clients who say, I got a tough one. Can you do a quick call with me just to go through what we would come up with? And same with our nutritionists. So that's just an example of the detail, 70 different areas. You get those sheets. Here is an example on the right of just the detailed nature of the frequencies, the genotypes, and that. Just so you know, you never need to use that. It's really, you get what you need out of the reports. But if you've got a tricky person, I like to dive in and try and figure out if I can really sleuth out where some of this might be coming from. Majority of people don't use it. It's just showing you that that's available. I've got a little case study here I'll walk through, and then I'm going to try and get into closing quickly here. Greg's in his 60s, knee pain, been going to physiotherapy for over a year now. Exercising, he couldn't exercise, gained 30 pounds. We got his DNA. We could see he has some of the plaquing gene, but in addition, he has the lactose gene. So what he needed was, he had low variation carbs. You could have more healthy carbs. He did have some cholesterol issues and fat issues, needed more protein, and had issues with lactose. We switched the diet to anti-inflammatory, cut back on saturated fats and salt, vitamin B, omegas, began riding a stationary bike. And in those anti-inflammatory foods, it turned out that was creating the knee pain. And so went in just 12 weeks, started losing weight, cut back the pain meditation, was completely back to his workout within 1 to 2 months. And so it was 12 weeks, so what, 3 months, pretty much back to normal. And so that's the sort of things that we see with our clients. Lovely to see. Simple process, just to tell you a little bit about it. It's just a cheek swab. You rub it on the inside of your cheek, that collects the DNA. 2 processes that can be used for a nutritionist. The way that you can do it is you can place the orders online and your customers use the link. They register, swab, and send in the sample, and then you both receive the results. We can do actually all of it for you, or you can do it all. It's up to you. And the other option, you keep the kits on hand, you swab them, mail it to us, and we've invoiced you when they come in. So you keep it on consignment, and you receive the results and review them with the customer, and they're in a portal. You can go through them. You both can receive them. You can have them. It's kind of what works for you and your business. We work through that with you and help you with it. In the kit, you get the swab, a welcome card, an envelope to mail it back, and a display kit if you want it. You can use 23andMe and Ancestry data. It has about 80% of the information. It's actually quite weak in carbs and insulin. That's one of the particular areas, but it's fast. You get the results in 24 hours. It's a much cheaper way for people to do it. It's about almost half the price to use that data. We try to make it kind of fun and accessible because this is tricky, like people worry about it. So we try to make the stuff look a little bit light and accessible. We work with partners all the time, and there's lots of things you can do. This really helps provide targeted advice. You can get enhanced, revenue because you do earn money. I'll go through that just really quickly. It differentiates from others. It's science-backed, and it really can eliminate some of the uncertainty. We have a certification program, about 5 hours online. I've written a textbook that supports it, plus all videos. that can go with it. So you can read the text or do the online videos. We have ebooks, Eat and Exercise for Your DNA. Those can be used with clients as well. So here's the pricing, just so that you know, it's the full total power. Everything is $4.99. Retail is what we recommended. You earn $100 for each test. You sell that wholesale. If it's just diet power you want, that's $50. And if you do the total power with the ancestry, there's $100 there as well, just in terms of each of your consults. And for networking nutritionists only, we are offering $100 pretty much off of everything that we do for you. So if you want to do this, our package to get certified and get a test is $5.99. We're offering you a discount code of networking nutritionists, where that'll be $4.99 to get the test. That's really essentially the cost of a test. Or the certification program, if you just want to do that, we'll take $100 off of that. Or if you just want the results, we'll take $100 off of that. So we really want to be able to support you if this is something you want to just try or test or consider, because it really is lovely. Jolly is our partner manager. She's a nutritionist. She's in marketing. She does all kinds of stuff. She's amazing. If you wanted to chat with her, you can email her at jolly@dnaPower.com, or you can do a Calendly link and set up an appointment. So you can customize your diets based on supporting the weak genes, help them live a longer, healthier life. Everyone has a unique genetic makeup to support their road to health. We encourage you, as you are doing for your customers, take power over your health, help your customers to take power over their health. And so that's kind of an overview around how you can use this data-driven information to personalize for DNA testing with your clients. So there we go.
Thank you so much for sharing all of that. I gained some insights there myself. We had a few questions come in as well. Is it okay if I jump right into them?
Please do. Yes.
Connie had sent in a question. It says, and I think this was while you were going through some of the reports. It says, if someone has been taking certain supplements for a long period of time, for example, the bees, can it skew the results showing that they process bees well?
Brilliant. So that's fantastic. So what I love to talk to is the difference between DNA testing and all of the other tests out there. So DNA testing is your body's roadmap. If you tested it one day or 101 days or years, it should be the same. We haven't got enough data to know there's probably a few tiny differences through radiation or damage, but your DNA is the same. You only do this test once, you never do it again. What it does is it's kind of the first foundational piece. It's almost the first piece of the puzzle you should have, because you'll know whether there's weaknesses in the bees. We also can show if you are at risk of iron overload or anemia, because that can vary whether you want to be doing the bees as heavily or not. If someone's at risk and has the rare iron overload gene, you need to be a bit more careful. So if they've been taking bees for a long time, we cannot tell any difference on how the genes are. Your body, if that's the epigenetics, it's how it's expressing, whether it's absorbing. That's where now blood tests, urine tests, biome tests would come in. So your blood test, as we know, they kind of in Canada really only test B12 well, but we don't test the other Bs. My issue was folate. It was B9. So it didn't show up on any test. I need to take about 4 times the RDA to keep my body functioning. If it is, and US has a deeper testing panels on supplements and nutrients. In Canada, like doctors won't even test for D anymore, because they just say everybody's vitamin D deficient. Why would we test that? But we can show you genetically if it's also a weakness. So if the person is taking Bs, we cannot tell you. That's where you're going to have to use your support to say, okay, is there something else in terms of the methylation, the detox that's maybe affecting this person because it's still not supporting them? Do they have an iron overload issue? Then we might, advise them slightly differently. So you use the data in a slightly different way to say, okay, what is that doing for you? Did you have an issue? Where else can I use it? But you would now go to blood testing or other to see if there is any further things that you can learn about that B12.
Okay. And maybe on a sort of similar vein here, there was a question asking about the MTHFR, the methylation testing that you're offering. Does it specify between overmethylating and undermethylating? Are you able to see those sorts of changes in the results that are provided?
Generally speaking, most of the results are under methylating. So when you've got a variation, you're under methylating. So you want to be, supporting that. And so I did pull up just to give you a sample of can it look like. Let me just see. So that one, I'll just share screen quickly. I'll show you the back results of what that can look like. So can you see a genetic profile here, Veronica?
Yep.
Okay. So what we're looking at is here's a vitamin panel. In the folate, you'll see there's 3 MTHFR genes. This is good, moderate, poor. And so this person is kind of a 50-50 on it, but we know that there's 2 genes that are probably not methylating that well. And so these ones you'd want to be taking a look at. We also would have, let's see if I've got a health panel there. We can look at methylation, and every gene is separated out individually. So you can try to look into the methylation process. Most people don't go that deep. I separated out because there was naturopaths in particular who wanted it to go that finely, but we can see, that's the gene that's poor. This one's moderate. Oh, actually this person is good MTHFR gene. So it means it might be in, it might be the FUT2 that's a problem in the methylating. Again, our bodies are so, we've got years of our body, and we just don't quite know through the epigenetics what might have occurred to create the situation. So we're generally looking at undermethylation when there's a weakness.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. Other questions? We had some questions sent in, I mentioned to you before, that were sent in beforehand, and you answered a bunch of them as we were going through. So I'm just looking here. You mentioned definitely able to use the test with children. You said a 1-day-old was your earliest. So that's fabulous.
And I just want to comment that, especially if people have kids, there's just so much toxins in our environment. If you can find out the things that will make your child sensitive, the younger you do this, frankly, the better you're off, because it never changes, right? So you're only doing it once. You might as well do it early. And so to me, you think of the amount of time and money you spend trying to fix your health. And so, they say you spend your health gaining your wealth, and then your wealth gaining your health. And so if we can invest more in our health earlier, we do better. So I always think it's a fabulous thing to learn about your kids earlier on. But even for people who are in their 80s and 90s, it can help create some shifts for them in terms of adjusting lifestyle to again, give them a few clues to change and the data to make it understand why they're making a change.
Mm-hmm. We have another question that just came in here. Is there a time limit on the discount offer?
We had a conversation about that just before we started. No, we had a time limit and we changed it. We'll leave it open for you. We want to be able to support you. We love nutritionists. We want to be able to support you in any way we can. We're going to leave it open. It'll probably, like, our system probably deletes them at about a year. You could reach out to us. So yeah, we want to be able to support you.
Another question here about some of the reporting. So you were looking at, I think it was under the brain power, there was something related to the concussion risk.
Mm-hmm.
Would that give you information in the report that speaks to dietary changes that are required, or more of those lifestyle changes that you said around reducing risk, or is it both?
The brain one is a tough one. I'm just seeing if I've got it pulled. Here's one here. I'll share the results. We've actually expanded this panel, so there's actually more in it right now. We are working with some compulsive tendencies. We're working with just, again, a few more areas in the brain. So here's a report. It's actually my daughter's: Alzheimer's and concussion, cortisol, depression, emotional eating, and Parkinson's are all okay. What I'm doing now is going into her recommendations. So we will, in Alzheimer's, talk to plant-based, but this one here, we don't give a lot of recommendations on food for concussion. We just say seek specialized recovery care. We've developed a lot of specialization in concussion. Actually, the cousin that I have that got me into this business, she has these genes and she has had 3 concussions. And so she has extensive protocols now on concussion recovery. There's just a lot of things. You really have to be careful of plaquing foods. You really need a clean diet. The same thing goes here, because the brain has to be able to clear itself. So you need an anti-plaquing. So the concussion is the plaquing builds up, and then the neurons can't fire properly, in terms of how they're working. And so it really slows the memory down. So we didn't put a lot of recommendations in that just because we're careful about where we cross into medical advice. I'm a huge believer in, you want to do some oxygen, some hyperbaric. There's a lot of people now that have brain tap to start stimulating the brain. I've been reading a lot right now, actually, on psilocybin, on how it can do some brain stimulating. And there's some wonderful studies that are happening now about regenerating neural pathways through that. And so some very good Canadian approved research on that. So I would just say, if someone's dealing with a concussion, go seek advanced protocols. I love Dr. Amen out of the US, Daniel Amen, Amen. I don't know how he says it. He has clinics just across the border. His brain, he works with pro athletes. He's got the best brain protocols and scanning to see where the damage is of anybody that I know. Canada's still approaching that. If people can afford it, I would say try and get some help with that.
He's actually somewhat recently opened a clinic in Toronto. So we have one on this side of the border now.
Is that right? He's phenomenal. Honestly, he has the most research, I think, on brain mapping after you've had an injury and how to help people recover and stimulate those areas. But again, I would say, you got any kid or you know anybody, you find out about these genes, because the diet, this gene, when you find out you have it, it changes people's lives, because if you change your diet, you're not going to die of cardiovascular, Alzheimer's, and you can recover. You'll be more careful about concussion.
Mm-hmm. Connie's saying, what was his name? Daniel Amen. I can't recall either how he pronounces his name. I should know this. I've read several of his books too. But it's Amen is his last name. And he has several offices in the US. They do a lot of functional MRIs and SPECT scanning and things like that to look at the brain.
Exactly. Yeah. There's so many groups that can use this. Really, this is something everybody can benefit from. Athletes benefit from it. They get that edge, especially we work with a lot of bodybuilders, pro athletes, because they're eating to support their bodies so that they get recovered more quickly. I love using it. You think of how many moms they're going, oh my God, my metabolism went berserk after having kids. Using it with kids, using with people who are starting to get autoimmune, chronic disease. So there's just so many places it provides that insight, wonderful way to add to your practice and just give people more data. So it's just a lovely way to provide and put data into people's hands.
Are you able to talk a little bit more about the certification program? We had a question on that was sent in advance. You mentioned it was 5 hours of training, but is there an exam that goes along with it, or is there continuing ed afterwards? Are you able to give a little more details there?
So there's about close to 5 hours of videos. You can choose to read it. You can choose to use the book. Yes, there's an exam after every chapter. There's 13 chapters, and there's a 100-question exam. And the information is all in the content. I'm very clear that your PowerPoints or your book will provide that information for you. You'll see if you made an incorrect answer, where you can look at that. But we're just trying to get you comfortable, because DNA is one of those things that people always think it's complicated, but it's actually not. It can be quite simple to work with. And so we're making sure you feel comfortable with it. We are always open for questions and comments anytime for our partners. We prioritize your swabs to make sure that they get through our lab. It's run every 2 weeks, just so you know, 2 to 4 weeks to get your results. And ongoing, when people ask for something, we put something out. And so, or we'll just tend to send, if you have questions, immediately respond to it, because it tends to be just in time in terms of your practice, what sort of issues you're looking at. We have blogs, for example, on Alzheimer's, or blogs on DNA diet versus keto. And so we try to keep giving you information that way.
And the last question that I see for right now, so for those of you who are here live, if you have another question, now's the time to feverishly type it into the Q&A box. But the last one I have here on my screen for the moment, is there an option to speak to some specialists or experts or doctors about client results if you need further assistance when you do run these tests?
So, I've been working with these for years and years now, so I'm always available. Our scientist is available. We've got nutritionists available. I have some very good naturopaths that I work with. I've got a stunning pharmacist. He's an ex-pharmacist, because he's moved fully into, he didn't actually like what pharma was doing for his clients, and he's moved fully into preventative health, but his chemistry knowledge is just off the charts. He's somebody that you could consult with. I don't know if he'd charge a fee. I'll talk to him because he's just brilliant. He did the trade show with me this weekend on health, and honestly, he's got protocols for concussion and glutathione and other things that are amazing. So yes, if you need help and you need a specialist, I've got great naturopaths and pharmacists that I'm sure I can work with them to make sure that it's, that they can create the time for you.
Wonderful. We did have one last question sent in. And can we use this for clients in the USA as well? So, what are the border rules on this?
It's so the swab when it comes in. So just so you know, these swabs are good for years. They have a little bit of a liquid in them, which stabilizes them. So honestly, it can take months to get to us and we still get the results. We work internationally. So we are actually an international company. I've got over half of our clientele in the US. These just get sent across the border. You declare it as a buccal swab, unused, going across and coming back. It's a used buccal swab. $1 is the declared value. The only issue out of the US, we can't pay for the shipping for it. So they do have to pay $15 to get it shipped back to us. So that's the only thing to know. They can buy online through your link and we send them the kit and they can send it back. And then we can upload the results into your portal and their portal in our customer area and have it. So we can really help you work with clients anywhere in the world.
Beautiful. That's great to know. That is all the questions that we have, and we just passed our hour, so we were perfect on timing. I really appreciate everything that you have shared today. This seems like such a great resource to have for ourselves, our families, and also to be able to offer to clients to give some of those really unique insights into somebody's health. So I appreciate you sharing all of this today.
Terrific. Thanks so much. We're delighted to work with networking nutritionists. We love what you're doing. Support each other. Our society needs the help.
Oh, I so agree. Thank you so much again, and I'm sure we'll be in touch soon.
Thank you.